Good morning, beginning farmer friends, or good evening, or good afternoon, or good middle of the night, whatever it is where you are right now. Today is March 25th, 2024, and I am in our lean-to right now, which one of the main uses, or one of the, I don't know if it's the main use, but one of the biggest and most important things that this lean-to gets used for is lambing season for us. So I'm going to be setting this lean-to up for lambing. We've already have 4 lambs on the ground from 3 ewes, but we've got another 40 plus ewes to go in the next couple of months. So we're going to get this building ready today. I'll share with you how we do lambing at Crooked Gap Farm. It's probably not ideally where we want to be, but it's where we are right now, and there's a method to our madness as far as what works for us in our system right now and when we are lambing right now. So I've got the 4430 warming up. I'm going to bring it in. We've got a few things to get out of here. This sorting system that I talked about a little bit, or this working system that I talked about a little bit, and then we're going to start bringing in some straw and bedding, talk about the pens, talk about our plan for the lambs in general. I do want to give one caveat as we go into this discussion about lambing, and that is not everybody is going to agree with me on what we do or why we do it or how we do it. And that's kind of what I love about farming. I was having this similar discussion with another farmer friend of mine the other day, and I was lamenting the fact as we are trying to figure out what to do with cover crops on our new farm as we transition it to perennial pasture. I was lamenting the fact that every expert, quote-unquote expert, seed salesman, university professor, or extension officer, or whatever, that I talked to, they all have a different idea of what is the right thing to do. And it's the same way in so much of agriculture, is that there are many different ways to accomplish a similar goal. Joel Salatin does it one way, Greg Judy does it another way, Gabe Brown does it another way, Will Harris does it another way. This is the way that we are lambing right now. Is it the way that we'll be lambing next year or the year after that? In a lot of ways, probably not. In some ways, probably. But we're going to go with it and always work to do a better job at what we're doing. So that's my caveat. I know you can put down in the comments what you think I should change. We might change it, we might not change it. It's all stuff that we got to work out and figure out. But we are continually working to do the best job that we can under the circumstances and systems and knowledge that we have, and all of that is constantly changing. Now that I've got that disclaimer out of the way. I talked about this sheep working system in a previous video, just a couple of videos back. I'll try to put a link above my shoulder here to that video. I was able to put a pen down here at the end of this using my aluminum galvanized, whatever these gates are here. I was able to use these and make a pin, put it right down here at the end of this, and then I by myself could run these sheep through this alley and into the head gate that I just took out. It worked great. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I'll kind of give you a rundown of what all we do for our ewes and our lambs. In a perfect world, I would like to be able to keep that working chute and alleyway in a building like this, but we don't have a ton of space in this building, especially with the lamb pens in here, so I didn't want it in here tangling things up. Let me give you an overview of what I'm going to be doing next and what we've got set up in here and what we will have set up in here. Currently we have 5 lambing pens, if we want to call them that. Some people in the sheep industry call them lambing jugs. We have 5 lambing pens set up. Some of them are divided pens, like this one where I just have a second gate put in the middle. So we have 1, 2, these 2 wooden ones right here I made last year, 3 and 4, and then we have a big one down here. This is 5. This one actually could be divided and placed into 2, so we could have 6 lambing pens. We do have room for a couple more smaller lambing pens, but 6 is what we have right now. This is not something where we keep the lambs for a long time. This is where, when a lamb is born, we bring the mother, the ewe, and her lambs so that they can kind of get situated, get bonded together and connected together. If there's anything that we need to do for the mother or for the lamb, we can do it in this pen. We can leave them in there for a day or two. If you go down to these down here, you can see in this pen and the one pen back here, I've got barrels with heat lamps in those. If we lamb at a really cold time, like, you know, right now we've been lambing in pretty warm temperatures, especially for early March in Iowa, but this coming week we've got some days where the low temperatures are going to dip down into the 20s and we're going to have some rain. If we end up having a lamb at that time, we do have these warm areas where we can put them. The lambs can go in there. These are attached to the wall so they do not get knocked down. The lamp is hung in there. You may be wondering, Ethan, why don't you lamb on pasture? Just put them out on grass, let them lamb on grass. And you know what? I wonder that same question. I think the easiest thing to say is we're just not quite there yet. When we started out lambing in January and February because we wanted the lambs to be big and almost weaned by the time they hit grass so that they would hit that flush of grass in the early spring and then hit their gains, and I would process them in the fall at 10 months old or so. It just hasn't worked out for us. We had to do so much lambing in this shed, and the weather was difficult, and sometimes it wasn't that it was cold, it was that it was cold and then warm and then cold and then warm. And so what we've ended up doing is continually we've been pushing our lambing back, yet we're still pretty hands-on compared to some other farms like ours because we are really trying to do as much as we can to track just the statistics of the lamb, not only the lambs born and who they're born to, but their lambing, like the weight at lambing of the lambs, how the ewe's condition is when they lamb, all of those things. And being able to have a little bit of control over them helps out with that, as far as having a place where we know they're contained to and where we can get our hands on them. Is it perfect? Probably not. Is it the way Greg Judy does it? Absolutely not. He would roll his eyes at this and he would say, put them sheep to work. And maybe that's what we ought to do. But like I said, right now we're pretty confident in what we're doing, and we're doing it with a purpose of gaining information about our sheep and building a flock of sheep that we feel like fits our farm as we move forward. And so it's what we're doing right now. With all of that being said, here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to take this little hog panel right here, and it is going to end up going across this space right here because I want to go get a big straw bale, a big round bale, and set it right here, that then we can use the pitchfork to put fresh bedding not only in our lamb pens but in this alleyway. And then I'll tell you more about the outside portion of what I'm calling our lambing setup. So as you can see, it's a little time consuming and labor intensive to use these big round bale, or this one big round bale. But the reason I do it is because of economics. A small square bale of straw is about $5. A large round bale of straw is $35 to $40, which is like 8 square bales. And we're gonna need more than 8 square bales because what we wanna do is we'll come through and pitchfork out some of this in areas as the lambing season progresses, and we'll add to it as the lambing season progresses in this open area and in the individual pens. Because as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but this ewe over here, she's already kind of starting to pick through those straw flakes that I threw in there. So we've got this bedded right now. I'm going to set the cattle panel up in front of that bale because I do not want the lambs to be able to get to that bale. We have had problems in the past, whether it was with large round bales of hay or large round bales of straw, where they would eat into it, or the ewes would eat into it and the lambs would burrow under, and then they had the potential of getting crushed. So I'm going to put this hog panel up in front of that bale, and then we're almost ready to bring the sheep in. There's a couple more things that we've got to do first. As you can see, when we bring our ewes into the lambing area, we do something a little different with our feeding, in that we use this hay cradle feeder that has a trough on it that we can use for alfalfa pellets. We also don't use small square bales. A small square bale can cost as much as $7 a bale for high quality alfalfa, And again, our round bales are something that we produce from hay ground that we have, and so it's just it's a little more time consuming to fork the hay off with the pitchfork and into the feeder a couple times a day, but we do it because we want to have the sheep eating up, biting through here like this, instead of off the ground or standing on the bale like they will often do with a round bale feeder. So that's the process that we do for feeding when we have the sheep. So now you see the inside area where we have the pens and a bedded area for the ewes to go into, and then an outside area where the sheep can go in to eat and to drink water and to get mineral. Now we also have a third area, and I'll tell you a little bit about that right now. The third area for our lambing setup is what my wife is kind of calling a creep area for the lambs, and it's actually this little grassy area behind the shed. The idea is to allow the lambs and not the ewes to be able to go out into this area to nibble on the grass as it starts coming up in the spring. And then eventually, as we're starting to work the sheep out, the ewes and the lambs out into grazing, we'll be able to open this area up, kind of use our lambing area as a home base, because we don't want them to be on the grass too quickly at the beginning of the season where bloat is a concern. And so we'll have an area for them to go out and then come back. But the beauty of this spot is we haven't had sheep on it for quite some time. Over the last year, it's been since last spring, actually, since we've had sheep on it. So what we're hoping is that the parasite load out there will be low for the little lambs that are down there eating those close shoots of grass. I think that we have everything set up. The only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put some alfalfa pellets in the feeder out there, and then I think we're ready to bring the sheep in. Okay, so finally, after all of that, we've got all but one of the ewes in the barn, so we'll get that one later. It does not look like she's close to lambing right now. We're going to let these 3 ewes and their lambs out, and then what I really would like to do is kind of sit down and tell you a little bit more about our protocols that we've put together over quite a few years of lambing. Not quite a few years, over the last few years of lambing. No experts, not by any way, shape, or form. As I've mentioned throughout this video a few times, I think we are pretty hands-on when it comes to lambing on our farm. It's not that we're out there assisting the ewes all the time or checking on them all the time, but when we do come out, or if there's a weather change, something like that, that maybe we're expecting more ewes to lamb or lambs to drop, we do keep an eye on them a little closer, and we do pin them up in these lambing pens with the ewes so that they can bond well, so that we can keep an eye on them and so that we can work with them. Oddly enough, I just got done eating lunch, and I was watching a video from Wholesome Family Farms. I think I'll put a link down in the description of this video. They're a farm in Minnesota, so quite a bit further north than us in southern Iowa, and they just got in truckloads, like semi-truckloads of bred ewes, and they're lambing out on their pasture. It's not necessarily green, or there's not necessarily a ton of forage, and they're just letting them go. And maybe that's what we need to be doing. That's not what we're doing right now. I think the 2 main reasons we're doing what we do is that we are trying to keep track of everything. As I mentioned before, everything that we have is registered. So the lambs that are born, we want to make sure that we pair up with the proper mothers, because especially this year we have different ewes that were bred to different rams that came from different farms, and so there is potential for us to have 3 different sets of lambs born as far as their father goes, as far as the paternal side of their breeding. So we want to be able to keep track of that, and we also keep track of the lambs as far as record keeping and tagging and understanding like that. So let me kind of just run down for you what we have in our Crooked Gap Farm lambing box here, and what we do when a lamb is born. So the first thing that we do when a lamb is born is we come out and we put it in a pen, as I've mentioned. In the pens, I'm trying to do a video here. In the pens, they have water, they have straw, we put in hay for them, and we put in alfalfa pellets for them. We also have a couple pens, if we're concerned about the lamb or the weather, that have those heat lamp areas and them creep areas for the lambs to get into. that are wired securely to the wall so that they're not coming down. Once we've paired up the mother with their lamb, one of the first things that my wife does is come out and do a couple things right away. One is she weighs them. We have this little lamb holder here that the lamb goes through like this, and we've got a scale that we keep in this box, just a little digital hanging fish scale or something like that, and she weighs each of the lambs born and writes down and records that lambing weight. One of the things that we've also done in the past right away is given each of the lambs some of this Nursemate ASP, which has some colostrum, some other vitamins and minerals in it. Kind of just gets their gut going, gives them a little energy if it's something that we're worried about. Like I said, in years past, we gave every lamb half of one of these, I believe is what it is, half of one of these tubes, every single lamb that was born on the farm. And then also we give them 2 pumps of this Nutri-Drench, which again is just some supplements, some biologicals, and just gives them that energy that they need, gets their gut going. And we just, like I said, 2 pumps, that's what we give them. We did give some Nutri-Drench to these first ones that were born. We did not give them this paste. And I think in part we're lambing later, a couple months later in some cases, than we have in the past. And so I think that we feel a little bit more comfortable with the health of the lambs. The next thing that my wife does right away, and I guess I should say, yeah, she does, I haven't done this, is we tag the lambs that are born. And we do just these little tiny clip-in ear tags. Sometimes they're called wing tags. You can use them, but they have a pointy end. They go through the ear, and you use this little paper punch type of looking thing to clip those into their ear. That way we have a number associated with the lamb, and we can match that number up with the ewe. Eventually we do come back through, especially with our ewe lambs, and put on a scrapie tag, but we don't do that right at the beginning. We just don't think it's as necessary right at the beginning. As they work their way into our flock, we can put the scrapie tag on them. Then we have a couple forms of identification that stay with them. Tags can come out, both these little brass tags that I showed you and the scrapie tags, they can come out, and so I like having a couple IDs of identification. That's the other thing that she does, is she writes some notes either in this notebook or just on her phone, and she matches up. You know, white ewe had a brown lamb and a white lamb, and what their genders are, if it's a ram lamb or a ewe lamb. She writes that down as well. So we have multiple forms of identification, and she also takes pictures of them. Is all of this necessary? No, probably not. I like having it on as a help. If we have a ewe that has lambs and she's having a tough time, we probably will call that lamb or that ewe in the future, and maybe not keep any of her lambs for breeding stock on our farm in the future, but we're not going to call it immediately. We're going to raise them out and move them along, wean the lambs off, sell them, raise them out for processing, call the ewe either by processing or selling it off the farm as well. So we don't want to just, let natural culling happen because there's something that we could have done that we didn't do. One more thing that I will talk about, and this is, I don't know if this is controversial, we do not worm across the board on our farm. We only worm by need basis. Most of the time we check their eyelids for that FAMACHA score and see if they look a little anemic, and if that's something we need to do. We also check other visual signs, whether they might have dirty bottoms or something like that, and we will worm. So this year, when we are going to worm, I think, talking to some of our neighbors who raise sheep, if we're going to worm our ewes, we're going to do it after they lamb, right after they lamb. When we have them in the pens, we can check them, decide if we're going to worm them or not. I will say, the 3 that have gone already that we just let out, we did not worm them. They all looked good. I do think that there are a couple, as we work our way through the lambing season, that might end up getting wormed, and maybe down the road getting culled from our farm. But we'll have the records of who we wormed, who we didn't worm, and then how they look, in a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road. That'll help us make the decisions that we need to make. This is a lot of talking. Let's look at some sheep. That is our lambing system in a nutshell. We have just begun lambing, as I mentioned multiple times. We've had 3 go so far, but we have a couple others that look like they're getting close, and then probably over the next month we'll have more go, and then the new batch of 23 other ewes will be coming along pretty soon with lambing as well. Is everything perfect in our lambing setup? No, of course not. Is it going to look like this in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years? No, probably not. Eventually, will we lamb completely on pasture in May when the grass is green? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Will we always put the lambs in the pens with the ewes? I don't know. What is our system going to look like? I don't know. That's I guess what I'm trying to get across is this has worked for us. Last year we had a fairly successful lambing season. We've made a few changes, added a couple things this year, taken away a couple things. We think that it'll be a successful lambing season, or we pray that it'll be a successful lambing season this year. And this is what we've got set up for it. It is a work in progress like everything else is on our farm, on a first generation farm. But we hope to continue raising great tasting lambs for meat, right? That's part of our business. And also expanding into being able to sell breeding stock, registered Kathadin breeding stock. So we're open to suggestions. We are always learning and growing. Some things work in other locales that don't work here. Some things work here that don't work in other locales. Not every farm is the same, but we all can work towards the same goal of doing things as best as we can for the animals, the livestock, for ourselves, for our emotional and spiritual and physical health, and the land and the animals and all of those things. That's our goal in the end. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are and whenever it is. Happy lambing season.